Hello, everybody. We're here on the Microsoft booth at NAB 2026, and I am Simon Crownshaw, Worldwide Head of Media and Entertainment, and I am joined on the stage by Guillaume Aubuchon from Avid. And would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Simon. Great to be here. Guillaume Aubuchon, I'm VP of Product Management at Avid. I oversee everything on the video side of the house at Avid, and excited to talk about some of the exciting things we're doing with Microsoft.
And you do have a lot going on.
We do indeed.
Yeah. So maybe let's start with a little bit of what's going on between us and Microsoft today.
Absolutely. So we've just launched Content Core,
Yeah.
and we support Azure in terms of bringing your own tenancy and bringing your own storage into Content Core for indexing and single pane of glass. So really excited to sort of continue our partnership with Microsoft there and the Azure team, and really make that a big part of our Content Core experience.
And that's not just the beginning of a Microsoft partnership, right? On the Avid side, you've been working with us for quite some time.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk a little bit about editorial on demand, even maybe the Teams huddle work we had done?
Absolutely, yeah. So I still believe that a virtualized media composer experience is best in a Windows environment and best on the Azure platform.
Amen to that.
Yes, indeed. We are doubling down into Edit on Demand this year. We're actually sort of giving it a relaunch at IBC, which I think will be an exclusive Azure platform. The Edit on Demand platform has been very successful for us in the past in terms of being able to have people spool up Media Composer on demand and pay by the drink from a Media Composer perspective and a virtual experience. So really excited to sort of relaunch that this year with Microsoft and really drive that forward.
That's awesome. I think the Microsoft partnership with Avid has been pretty ongoing, right? We've had some major successes together in terms of what we've done, editorial on demand, like you talked about. I think also just some of the successes we saw even back in COVID, right, in terms of how we could deploy stuff together, which was pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely, and I think now we're seeing really the maturation of hey, everybody's in a remote environment, and to some degree we're moving into an even more globalized media space than we've ever seen before. So we're working with a lot of companies that need to spool up editorial or journalistic or broadcast environments at a moment's notice in regions that don't necessarily have on-premises infrastructure. So, being able to do that and being able to have Microsoft as a partner, especially in places like the Middle East where you guys have a great presence, I think is a tremendous advantage for us right now.
And that speaks to what you're doing from a cloud perspective, right? Because traditionally, Avid has been more of an on-prem Nexus component, right, and everything that comes together with that. Now, I think from speaking to Welford and others, right, it's really leaning in on the cloud for more so than ever before.
Absolutely, and I think this is really like the full maturity of that experience too, where the user is really abstracted from where that media is. That's really what Content Core is meant to deliver, and really doesn't have to worry about where that media is physically located in the cloud or on premises, and really just being able to access that on demand, being able to spool that up on demand, like I said, in an editorial environment. That's providing a tremendous amount of flexibility.
And what does that mean for you? Because obviously going to the cloud, that has major benefits from an AI perspective, access to compute and everything else like that. But maybe just talk a little bit about Avid's journey towards artificial intelligence. Where does that go? Obviously, we're not the only cloud you work with, but I think you've sensed the landscape is changing a little bit in terms of what people are expecting, the real-time nature of data, the collaboration that people are expecting, and maybe even access to dynamic compute to make those things work. Maybe talk a little bit about that.
No, absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, we're Copilot users, both internally and externally. We're doing most of the development with Copilot right now as well. So, we're huge proponents of the Copilot platform, and I believe that as we develop more agentic workflows, which is what we're driving into editorial, and have people have access to increasingly contextualized media and metadata as a result of that, we're going to be driving forward with what I consider the sort of agentic capabilities of an enterprise level Copilot experience.
Yeah, I think for me, it's pretty amazing to see both the evolution of AI over the past 2 years, but also more so even the evolution of Avid over the past 2 years, because it's been a pretty transformational change and fast, right? Would you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've only been at Avid for a little over a year at this point, and I think Avid sort of needed to transform in multiple different ways, but we needed some better footing when it came to being an enterprise SaaS provider, first and foremost, and we're really transitioning most of our models into a SaaS and managed model from that perspective. And I think that's what clients and the industry is demanding at this point, is a move away from physical infrastructure, a lot of heavy lift and upgrades, and into a managed service. So we have changed Avid fundamentally to sort of reflect that new reality.
I think as your solutions become so dynamic as part of the content production process, and maybe access to infinite compute is going to be really critical, because you can imagine in the cloud things are just happening all over the place, right? I think that's going to become key. Maybe just I'd love to get your perspective on where do you see the future of the industry going over the next year? Because I think it's moving faster than ever. So how do you keep up almost?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, AI changes about every 3 weeks in terms of what those capabilities are and how you can apply that. But I feel like we're exiting a period of time in media where we're going to start to see some solidification of workflows, and we're going to start to see some real benefits of AI when it comes to efficiency in the media pipeline. And I think that's going to sort of help stabilize the overall media and broadcast landscape across the board, just from a business perspective as we get to ROI.
Do you think customers are kind of seeing the benefits yet, or do you feel like they're kind of waiting on partners like yourselves or cloud providers like ourselves to kind of put that all together for them? How do you feel like they're realizing those values?
I think last year, at least when I came to NAB last year, it felt like AI in general was still very much in a bolt-on sort of parlor trick, if you will. Stage of the experience. I think we're seeing, AI get embedded much deeper into the workflow and the metadata, and especially from an enterprise and professional perspective at this point. So I think this is going to be the year of the true unlock in the overall workflow. And I think when I look at a company like Microsoft, particularly, there's so much good lineage in terms of the enterprise landscape, in terms of treating data with the right security and boundaries in the greater contextualization space. So that's where I'm seeing a maturity of that in the workflow this year.
And from an Avid perspective, that will be important, right? Because I think with the advent of the creator economy being so big, I think more media organizations doing more, but also non-media organizations or non-traditional media organizations are doing more than you would probably imagine. So I think enabling the Avid platform to help those organizations or those creators do more is probably pretty critical.
Absolutely. I mean, and one of the ways we're changing our business model overall at Avid is to try to not have the size of the organization we serve dictate the services that we can provide them. And I think, whether you look at cloud, whether you look at AI, we're enabling a much more scalable model up and down the stack, whether that's to major broadcast and enterprise customers or all the way down to individual creators. We're in a much better position than we ever have before to sort of cover the gamut of that.
I'm going to switch gears before we end to one particular part, which is really important from a Microsoft perspective, but I think it'll actually end up benefiting Avid and other partners significantly. We talk a lot on our side about what we call connected intelligence. I think there's no doubt that across the media or video pipeline, there hasn't been enough intelligence about what was actually going on, the metadata, the core elements of the pipeline, what was needed. I think, obviously, we're leaning in very heavily into figuring out what the knowledge bases are, the content intelligence base as it stands. How can Avid take advantage of some of those kind of solutions to kind of on top of what you already do?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, I think we're one of my major objectives at Avid is to really get Avid plugged into the greater ecosystem of analytics. So, I mean, if you look at other industries, whether that's financial services or other aspects of just other verticals in general, there's so much more connective tissue when it comes to the process versus the product. And I think, we really want to partner with Microsoft to sort of plug those analytics into more traditional analytics tools that have already existed to sort of give that true end-to-end efficiency media pipeline sort of overview.
Yeah, it's really key. I think it's great when you talk to media companies and they always say that the data is great and it's not as good as it needs to be. And I think what we're going to find with AI is that maybe confusion in, confusion out. We need to kind of avoid that a little bit. And as those pipelines become more real time, right, it's going to be very important to kind of get that content intelligence or overarching data intelligence just better to where it needs to be.
Absolutely, and the quicker you can turn out content and the more efficiently you can turn out content, that is the whole game. And I think that a lot of this industry has been very bespoke and very, very in service to the creative, and we very much still are in that space. But I think this period of time demands a greater look at the process and the efficiency of the process and the ROI of that process, and that's one of the tremendous benefits of stitching that all together.
Yeah, some really great insights. I think as people are walking by and looking at us and they go like, "Hi, Microsoft and Avid back on the stage together. We haven't talked a lot for a while together." I think we actually do really partner well, right? And
Absolutely.
I think continue to partner well. And I think there's just a lot that we're thinking about in the future. I mean, I'm really impressed by what Welford and team have done and yourself around the Content Core platform. I think it's phenomenal updates, and the progress and speed you've made is amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of our largest customers run on Azure and run their archive workloads on Azure. So
I didn't pay him to say that, but it's a wonderful partnership. And actually, I think we've really accelerated some momentum over the past month or two, and I'm really pleased. And so, Guillaume, I'm super pleased with the conversation. Thank you so much for your insights and the way you talk so passionately about Avid and all the work that you're doing and the partnership with Microsoft.
And thank you very much to Microsoft for having me. Thanks so much, Simon.
You're very welcome.